Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Two Friends. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Jessica Fiakovich. And Jessica is, from what it sounds like, just a butt kicker. She's just kicking butt and taking names. She's also involved in some other nonprofits that sound really awesome, like the Fight Back organization, near and dear to my heart because it's helping entrepreneurs and business owners who we love to help. Anyway, all that being said, Jessica, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brett. I'm excited to be here.
So Transworld Business Brokers, you're a franchisee. I know that organization very well, but you're like the model, right? You have the biggest and best and fastest growing franchise in the entire organization, right?
Yeah. So we've been the number one franchise globally for the last 6 years, 5 years now. We're working on our sixth, and we own territories and offices in Colorado, Dallas, and we just bought a franchise in Las Vegas as well. So we just opened that one.
How have you been able to grow and maybe you have a secret sauce for how you handle business? So tell us about that.
I don't think it's a secret sauce, right? So I think one is hard work. My business partner is my husband, and we're both very hard workers. But we've also, and like I feel like this is like cliche almost in entrepreneurship now, but we've really relied on building a solid culture in our organization, and that's really I think our secret sauce is our team. All of our business brokers come from small business backgrounds. They really truly care about the small business environment, and I think that's where we're able to thrive over some of our competitors.
I mean, and you even wrote a book, right? Helping business owners figure out how to exit, I guess you said quickly and for the most profit.
Yeah, it's an online course. The book is forthcoming in
Okay.
January though. So you're a
Ah,
little ahead. This might be the first place I've announced it. But yeah, it's forthcoming in January 2022.
awesome. I can't wait to get a copy. So we have a business law firm. As we say, we're leading the fight back for business owners because business owners are targeted in lawsuits and there's a lot of unfair things. It seems like it's all sunshine and roses when you own a business. Oh, they have the big bucks, but the money goes out as fast as it comes in. The profits, and depending on the type of business, not always the margins aren't always that great. And there's just a lot to being an employer and trying to build the culture like you talked about. And we could get into culture. One of my favorite subjects is team building and culture. But specifically, I've always had a hard time with the fact that there weren't, frankly, better business brokers out there. I mean, like here, like you meet a guy, even if he's with Transworld and like, yeah, I got these businesses, but it's always such a frustrating process instead of an easy process, I guess. So, and that's why I'm asking about the secret sauce. It's like business broker, they have the business, they set you up the buyer, and then they're like, well, the attorneys figure out the rest and we'll take our cut. And it's just it hasn't been on our end the best experience. And I hope, and it sounds like with your growth, you have changed that for you guys. So what do you guys do that's different?
Yeah, I mean, kind of describe ourselves as full service business brokers. So we get involved, like you mentioned, our course and things like that. We get involved even before the business is sold, helping them understand what the value is and how to increase the value or what's decreasing that value, and then all the way through the deal. So like once we bring the buyer and seller together, there are other people that enter the deal, right? Attorneys like yourselves, CPAs. Oftentimes on the buy side, we have business bankers. And at that point, we don't want to get too involved. Like, I don't want to ever do your job, right? No offense, but I know what
Yeah.
you do is tough. But we perceive ourselves more as a quarterback, right? So how are we helping the communication of that deal flow, especially, when you have a bunch of business professionals and business owners in one transaction, someone needs to take the lead. And that's really what we're doing through that transaction part, through due diligence, through negotiations with the APA or the purchase contract and things like that. Is we're that quarterback that's leading the communications, keeping the deal on time and on track, and making sure all the boxes are checked.
You're contacted, let's say, because you do it on both ends. You're contacted by someone looking to sell their business, and you're contacted by people looking to buy a business. So do you have, like, in the attorney world, we have a conflict of interest if we would try to represent both sides. Are you negotiating the price and kind of, like you said, playing the middleman or middle person, or what what's your strategy there?
Yeah, in most states we're bound, and in Colorado we're bound by real estate law. So we do we have to either pick a side or what's called a transaction broker. In almost all of our transactions, we're a seller's agent, meaning that we're representing the seller, and we are, we have fiduciary responsibility to the seller. Now, that being said, unlike residential real estate or commercial real estate, and there's not a whole lot of business brokers running around. So most deals don't have a seller's agent and a buyer's agent.
Exactly.
Oftentimes, the buyers representing themselves with the help of attorney or CPA. So we do have to handle those negotiations with the buyer directly in conversation, but our fiduciary responsibility and our loyalty is bound to the seller side. So that how that looks practically would be like, we would never tell a buyer, I think a seller would accept a lower offer. That's
Right.
not our job, right?
Right.
Our job is to get the best deal for the seller. So in almost all of our transactions, I'd say 95%, our firm is sellers agents. We do take on a very few buy side clients, but they're few and far between, and they're typically buyers that we've had long standing relationships with and already closed multiple deals.
So if a buyer contacts you and says, "Hey, what kind of businesses do you guys have for sale?" You show them your catalog, right? Like you show them the inventory, but you're just saying like, "But we represent them, so we're the fiduciary to the seller, but we can still like, who are you interested in talking to?" In other words.
I mean, both, right? We have to get buyers to sell the businesses. We do disclose that in our first engagement with most of our buyers. So if they inquire on a business, usually the first step they'll sign is a non-disclosure agreement, and attached to that non-disclosure agreement for our office is a definition of working relationships,
Sure.
which defines that we're a seller's agent and what that means, because some people just don't understand that
Mhm.
means. But we are interested in talking to both because as a fiduciary to the seller, we have to do everything possible that we can to bring buyers to their business to make offers.
You guys are out there, and you're not only just lazily again taking inbound calls of businesses, like you're actively educating business owners on how to increase the value of their business and sell the right way, and not just work 30 years of their lives or 10 or 15 and get nothing out of it. And to me, that sounds so nice, because that's where you earn the commission instead of just bringing two people together, right, with almost minimal work.
The actual transaction is a lot more work than you would think, right? We mentioned before how many people that are involved in the deal, and unlike a house, right? Like we don't have tons of buyers shopping and making offers on a business. It's a very specific transaction. So
Yes.
we might talk to 2, 3, 400 buyers before we find the right buyer. So it is a very complicated transaction to bring a buyer and seller together. But yes, our firm, we have a program called Prep to Sell, where what we've seen over the years is that a lot of business owners don't sell for financial reasons, right? They sell because something personal in their life has changed. They have to move, a spouse got a new job. Sometimes, unfortunately, there's health issues. And there wasn't really a plan in place ahead of time. So what we're trying to do is educate business owners that you don't really need a full-blown exit plan, right? But you at least have to understand how the business for sale market works and what's going to increase the value of your business and the likelihood that it will sell. And that's what we're taking business owners through is we're doing evaluation for them, showing them where they stand if they were to sell today and what's increasing that value and decreasing that value in the eyes of a buyer, right? So I always tell people it's not me deciding what your business is worth. It's really the buyer, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately sometimes a business banker too, because they're financing the deal. So a few years ago, we polled a large number of our buyers and bankers and said, hey, what are you willing to pay more for? And what are you not willing to pay for? And we rolled that into a consulting program and now an online course that walks business owners through that in a 12-month program. So our hope is that by educating business owners more, we increase the percentage of businesses, especially small businesses, that are able to sell for a good profitable number that a lot of business owners right now are counting on for retirement.
A lot of people say, and gosh, I've heard this so many times, well, I can't sell for that price because I've been doing this 30 years. It's like the amount of hard work that you put into the business I mean, you can't grow a good business without working hard, but it doesn't mean it's worth more. Just because you've had a business for 30 years doesn't mean it's worth more than business for 5 years outside of certain, contracts that maybe the business has in place. So I think that's frustrating for business owners, but there's not a lot of people out there coaching business owners along the way of what is valuable for business and what isn't.
Yeah, and that's why we really stepped into that role because we have the data, right? I told you, how many buyers we talk to per listing. We sell about 100 deals per year. So, we hear from the buyers, we get feedback on every listing of why they're not buying it, why the offer is not full price. And what we did is we basically took that data and converted it into something that's usable for business owners.
So what's that like for you saying, do we continue to focus on what we're doing, or do we broaden our own horizons and expand? So what's the thought process? What was it like for you guys?
Um, it's funny. Like my husband always says, like if you do something well, just keep doing more of that. And we have a one question I get a lot is as a business broker is like, have you ever wanted to buy your listings, or have you ever seen such a great business that you're like, hey, I want to go do that? And what I've really found over the years is that we've created a great niche for ourselves, and I found a really good, I'd say, calling, but also a good fit for my skills and my personality in this industry. So we're really focused on small business brokerage, helping people increase the valuation of their business and eventually get sold, and really staying, when I say small business, we're usually dealing with businesses that are under 20 million in revenue. I
Hmm.
think our average business does about just over 1 million in revenue. That's our niche and we're sticking to it. The expansion may be geographic, but we're going to stick in that niche and do what we
Yeah.
do really well.
Yeah. So a few thoughts there. I had somebody one time, a very, very smart individual, a lot of business experience. He was asking a group of people, how do you know what a business is worth? How do you know what a business is worth? At the end of the day, the right answer was what someone will pay for it, right? Like
Right.
you
Yep.
can make all the arguments you want, um, but what I like about what you're doing is everyone hears of all these fancy terms now, right? You got like seed money, investment bankers, and yeah, you see huge deals that are acquisitions in the hundreds of millions. But what about everybody else? What about all the small business owners out there who want to build up a business, and like you said, something happens and they're counting on that money, and that's just an underserved area, and so it's really really valuable what you're doing. And the last question I ask you about expanding, too many business owners chase shiny objects. They have a little bit of success and it's like, oh, now I can do this and I can do this. You guys stuck to your focus and your niche. You just did it in a different region.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we hope to do. I mean, I think there's like you brought up, there's a lot of people in our industry that'll move up market and do, which means they're doing bigger deals. They want to work with bigger companies. And we've really stuck to serving that small business. And I think that's what's allowed the geographic expansion because it's an underserved market. There's not a lot of places small business owners can go for this type of help.
What about technology, right? There's going to be so many changes to so many industries in over the next 10, 15 years. But
Mhm.
what about on your end? What do you think's new on the new frontier in the next decade or so?
It's interesting because to be honest, we haven't spent a whole lot of time like in our market of small business owners. Most of the businesses are still owned by baby boomers, so it's like 55 to 70% depending on the industry. And our practice in particular, we're really focused in construction, trades, like that blue collar manufacturing.
Hmm.
And typically you see technology adopted slower in those industries, and especially in that age demographic. So really at this point, although I know technology is out there, there's other bigger, I'd say, fish to fry. So I was on a call with a client the other day, and one of the biggest things that we're helping them combat is workforce. So they also have an aging workforce, and that affects business valuation. Like if their team starts to leave, right? We've
Yeah.
obviously had the pandemic, and then there's a gap in workforce in a lot of these trades where individuals like our age were encouraged to go to college and chase white collar jobs. And so there's a gap of people to fill these new roles. So to answer your question, like I'm not really diving into the impacts of AI and crypto and blockchain because there's still some of those big people problems to solve in the clients that we're serving.
The technological changes, they're going to hit the bigger industries first, right? Or the bigger businesses. And you think the slower adoption of technology means that there's a longer shelf life for ignoring those sort of changes right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen, but we're focused on, I'd say, the present and short-term future and
Yeah,
how that's going to affect our industry and our clients.
gotcha. So tell us a little bit more about Fight Back Foundation.
Yeah, so Fight Back Foundation was created by my good friend and mentor, Heidi Ganal. It was originally an organization to support social entrepreneurs. So, entrepreneurs that developed some type of business that was giving back to the community, giving back to the economy. And we did that through mentorship, boot camps, and grants. And it was a very successful program. But last year, during the pandemic in 2020, we saw how many small businesses in general struggled. So we pivoted last year. We actually opened up those services to all small business owners. So moving forward, we're going to be delivering mentoring and grants to small business owners that are struggling. It doesn't have to be a pandemic, right? It could be
Right.
something else, business interruption, just need some help with growth. And it's mostly focused in Colorado where we're located. But I took over as president earlier this year, and we're really excited about the expansion and being able to deliver services for all small business.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's just so inspiring when somebody's has a lot of success in their business, and that's where 100% of their focus could be, but they carve out time to make a difference and give back. So kudos to you. Um,
Thank you.
Jessica, why don't we end on this? I was trying to think of maybe if I was listening, the question that I'd want to hear, and maybe one or two tips for business owners thinking like, how do I make my business more valuable? Things that you guys advise for your clients.
Yeah. So the first one's super boring, but it's really important. And it's keeping clean books and records. So making sure your QuickBooks is up to date and reconciled, trying to keep as many personal expenses out of your business. It sounds simple and it sounds boring, but it's a really big deal. And getting your business sold, or not even just getting your business sold, like if you need financing or something like that down the road. So that's my first tip. And then my second tip is you hear a lot about on business podcasts or books about being the owner of your business rather than the operator. And when you go to sell, that's really important too. But one key important factor is as the owner, trying to remove yourself from revenue generating roles. So making sure that people are doing business with the business, not just because they like the owner. So keeping that in mind. And if you have those two things in place, it's much easier to find a buyer for your business and get a better price.
And I think, chime in and add to this. The reason why is that most buyers don't want to buy a job. They want to buy a
Mhm.
business. And when they're buying a business that requires the person to be there 40 hours a week, it's like I'm just buying myself a job with all the headaches. But when you buy a business that's run like a real business, then you're just looking at, okay, I'm going to spend this much, and then this many years later, I'll have paid it off, and now I can have a profitable business, and I can make some changes and be the visionary. That's super important. Well, listen, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. I love obviously talking business and small business, and I hope that we gave some people some value today. But if anyone, so I grew up in New Mexico, so the Southwest is near and dear to my heart. But if anyone's listening in those regions right now, you said Dallas, Colorado, Boulder
In Las
area,
Vegas.
and Las
Yep.
Vegas. Congratulations, by the way. How do they get in
Thanks.
touch with you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is you can visit my website, which is jessicafiakovich.com. You can find me on all of the social media accounts as well, at Jessica Fiakovich.
Well, you heard it from her yourself. Thank you so much, and good luck to you on your continued success, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett.